Okay, it is definitely thinking cap time, because this one's going to be kind of tricky. I'm going to give you 3 arguments, and what I want to know from you is, does the conclusion follow from the premise by the rule of subcontrary for any of these? Okay? The first argument is this: some dogs are brown animals. Therefore, some dogs are not brown animals. So would it be the case that some dogs are not brown animals if it's true that some dogs are brown animals? How about this one? Some dogs are canines. Therefore, it is false that some dogs are not canines. If we assume it's true that some dogs are canines, would it have to be false that some dogs are not canines? Some dogs are brown animals. Therefore, it is false that some dogs are not brown animals. All right, so for any of these, does assuming the premise is true require us to accept that the conclusion is true? And I would ask that you look really carefully at the rule of subcontrary. Okay, because the rule of subcontrary says this: when you're given corresponding I and O statements, as you are in each one of these arguments here, at least one of those statements is true. But they can both be true. Or it can be the case that one is true and one is false. Okay? And this is where subcontrary can be kind of tricky. Because in our ordinary conversations on a daily basis, when we make an I statement or an O statement about something, we're generally implying the other statement as well, right? So if you were to tell your friends, like, hey, check it out, some lectures that John does for his logic class are lectures he's actually sober for. It's like, what are you implying, right? So we imply the corresponding statement being true when we offer some statements in our daily conversation, but strictly logically speaking, it doesn't necessarily follow that if you're given a true I statement, the corresponding O statement would be either true or false. It could be either, because the rule of subcontrary says that given corresponding I and O statements, at least one is true. So what's tricky about these 3 arguments here is that they all happen to be comprised of statements that are true. And they happen to be comprised of statements that used in our daily life would imply the corresponding other statement, the corresponding I or O statement. But strictly logically speaking, that's not the case. In fact, when we try to deduce the truth value of an I or an O claim from its corresponding I or O claim being true, we've committed the fallacy of illicit subcontrary. And the fallacy of illicit subcontrary makes an argument invalid when we've adopted the Aristotelian standpoint. So we can only deduce the value of an I or an O statement when we know that its corresponding I or O statement is false. Then we know the other one has to be true, because the rule of subcontrary says at least one of these is true. But when we know an I or an O statement is true, we can't draw any conclusions about its corresponding statement. And if we do that, we've committed the fallacy of illicit subcontrary.